A very good morning to my dear students. Today we are moving on to a new poem. A new poem which is included in the second unit. I think that you are ready to move on to the next section after the discussion of the previous section. So, in the last class we were discussing about the grammatical portions, the passive voice, the active voice, then the collocation, then the process of compounding, different ways of compounding, different kinds of compound words, and writing informal letter. And I am sure that you are fed up with all these kinds of exercises. So, we can go for a relaxation. So, learning a poem is definitely it brings you some kind of relaxation. I think for the time being we can move to learn a poem that will definitely make you relaxed, that will definitely make you entertaining for some time, for at least a few hours. Okay. Anyway, let us move on to the poem. The Muddle Head, written by S. Marshak. So, this is the title of the poem, The Muddle Head. What do you mean by muddle? Muddle. The meaning of muddle is given at the bottom of the page. Muddle-headed. What do you mean by muddle-headed? Muddle-headed means confused. So, muddle-head means a confused. So, the Muddle Head, written by S. Marshak. Marshak is actually a Russian poet. So, now let us move on to the poem to know what is the theme of the poem. This poem is written to make you laugh your head off. Enjoy it. So, it is ultimately for your enjoyment. It is ultimately for your entertainment. So, read the poem, enjoy the poem and entertain. Look at the first stanza of the poem. I knew a man from Petushki, as muddle-headed as could be. He always got mixed up with clothes. He wore his mittens on his toes, forgot his collar in his haste, and tied his tie around his waist. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So, from the first paragraph itself, we can get a clear image of the person who is being discussed in the entire poem. What is the speciality of this person? The person is a muddle-headed man. That means the person is a muddle-headed man. That means the person is confused, a confused man, doing everything, whatever he does in a confusing manner. I knew a man from Petushki. So, the poet is saying that I knew a man from Petushki. Petushki is actually a city or a town in Russia. So, I know a man from a town in Russia, and what is his speciality? He is a muddle-headed man. He always got mixed up with clothes. He wore his mittens on his toes. So, whatever he does everything in a confusing manner. He always got mixed up with clothes. So, he always got mixed up with his clothes, and he wore his mittens on his toes. So, why we are saying that he always got mixed up with clothes? The example is given in the next very line. He wore his mittens on his toes. What do you mean by mittens? Mittens is actually a type of gloves that cover the four fingers together and the thumb separately. So, mittens is actually a gloves which we use to cover the hand, especially the finger and the thumb. And he wore his mittens on his toes. What do you mean by toes? Toe is actually each of the 5 digits on the end of the foot. So, instead of wearing the mittens in the hand, he used to wear it in the foot. So, in that way he is confused. Forgot his collar in his haste, and he forgot his collar in his haste. In his haste means in his speed in his shift and tied his tie around his waist. We used to use our tie here, but this man is actually using his tie around his waist. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So, in that way, whatever he does in a confusing manner, and he does everything just opposite to normal people do. They told him as he went about, "You have caught your coat on inside out." And when they saw his hat, they said, "You have put a saucepan on your head." What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. Again and again, the poet is going on to discuss the things he does in total confusion. They told him as he went about, "You have got your coat on inside out." When he wore his coat, it was just the opposite way normal people do. So, what do you mean by inside out? Inside out is actually with the inside surface turned to be on the outside. So, when he wore the coat, it was almost like the inside surface turned to be on the outside. That means he wore it in the opposite way it is expected to be. So, this may happen in our life also. When we do something, when we wear our shirts or our clothes very speedily, this automatically happens. So in that way, the muddle-headed man wore his coat just opposite the way it is expected to be. And when they saw his hat, they said, "You have put a saucepan on your head." So, if you look at the picture, you can see the image. So, look at the hat. Look at the hat. It is almost like a saucepan. So, it is actually a comment made by his fellow beings. And when they saw his hat, they said, "You have put a saucepan on your head." What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So, in that way, he does everything in a confusing manner. At lunch, he scratched a piece of bread and spread some butter on his head. He put his walking stick to bed and he stood in the rack instead. What a muddlehead was he, that man he lived in Petushki. And normally, we eat bread and butter as breakfast. We normally eat in the morning. But what this man does, this man eats bread and butter in the noon when he is supposed to take the lunch. So, in that way, everything he does is just opposite to what normal people do. He put his walking stick to bed, and he stood in the rack inside. So, a normal person is supposed to put or place the stick in the rack, and he is supposed to sit on the bed, but he did everything just opposite. What he did here, he just placed the stick on the bed and he stood in the rack instead. So, in that way, he does everything opposite to normal people do. What a muddlehead was he, the man who lived in Petushki. So, in that way, the man who lived in Petushki is very confused, doing everything in a confusing manner. He walked up to a tram one day and climbed in very sprightly. What do you mean by sprightly? Full of life and energy. Conductor thought that he would pay. Instead, he said politely, "Pardon your beggar, Kister Monductor, I am off for a week's vacation. I stop you to beg your tramway tar as soon as we reach the station." Conductor got a fright and didn't sleep that night. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. He walked up to a tram one day and climbed in very sprightly. What do you mean by tram? Tram is actually a vehicle driven by electricity which runs on rails along the streets of a town and carries passengers. See, for example, if you go to zoo or some places like that, you can definitely find trams, a vehicle that carries passengers which is used to run by electricity. So he walked up to a tram one day and climbed in very sprightly. One day he got into a tram with full energy. Conductor thought that he would pay. So at that time the conductor, the authority, thought that he would definitely pay the fare. Instead he said politely, but what did he do? Yeah, instead he said politely, pardon your beggar, Kister Monductor, I am off for a week's vacation. So this is actually Spoonerism. What do you mean by Spoonerism? So turn over the page, take page number 56, look at the second exercise. So there is given the definition of Spoonerism. A Spoonerism is a verbal error in which a speaker accidentally transposes the initial sounds or letters of two or more words, often to humorous effect. See, for example, if there occurs a slip of tongue, we can say, or we can call it as a Spoonerism. Look at this line, pardon your beggar. So look at this example. So this is an example of Spoonerism. So here we can find that there is a slip of tongue. When we say something very quickly, there occurs a slip of tongue. So for example, look at this phrase, pardon your beggar. What is a Spoonerism you can find here? What is a slip of tongue you can find here? Yeah, here this pard, this part is actually suitable in this word, part plus on, that means pardon, a polite way, and this beg is attached with this ing, then we get begging. So what actually the man is trying to say is that begging your pardon, that means I request you, begging your pardon, that means I request you. So this is actually what do you mean by Spoonerism, a slip of tongue. Sometimes we say something quickly, this kind of slip of tongue happens, and we by mistake pronounce like this, pardon your beggar, instead of begging your pardon. So this is known as Spoonerism. And look at the next line, Kister Monductor. Can you say the exact usage there? Yeah, Mr. Conductor. So in that way, so when he utters such kind of things, everyone will be laughing at him. Okay, pardon your beggar, Kister Monductor, I am off for a week's vacation. So instead of paying the money for the service he got, what he did say? He did say, I beg your pardon, begging your pardon. So I am requesting you, Mr. Conductor, I am off for a week's vacation. So I am going for a week vacation. I stop you to beg your cramway tar. Again there is Spoonerism, cramway tar. T. Look, bring T instead of C there. Then we get tramway. Tramway car. Okay. I stop you to beg your tramway tar. That means I stop you to beg your tramway car as soon as we reach the station. So as we are reaching the station, I request you to stop your tram because I want to go to enjoy my vacation. So I am actually requesting you. So I don't have money with me to pay you. So begging your pardon. Conductor got a fright and did not sleep that night. And conductor was very much frightened. Why he is saying like this? Everything in a confusing manner. Everything is in a confusing manner. So even the thing he utters is also in a confusing manner. And conductor was hearing all these kinds of things for the first time. So he was in a fright and did not sleep that night. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So in that way, again and again, the poet wants to focus on the think that this man from Petushki is really a muddle-headed. He rushed into the first cafe. A railway ticket, please, one way. And at the ticket office said a slice of tea and a cup of bread. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So in that way, everything he does is just opposite to normal people do. So see, immediately after this, he suddenly went to a tea cafe and asked them to give him a ticket, train ticket. And after that, he just went to the ticket counter and asked them to serve him a cup of tea and a slice of bread. And again, look at this line, a slice of tea. Again, a slice of tea is clashed with a cup of bread. We only say cup of tea and slice of bread. So that too he uttered in a confusing manner. So we can find, so this is completely confusing. First of all, he went to a tea cafe and asked them for a ticket, train ticket. And after that, he went to a ticket counter and asked them for a cup of tea and a slice of bread. And he is ordering in a confusing manner like a slice of tea and a cup of bread. So in that way, what a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So in that way, the man who lived in Petushki is this much muddle-headed, this much confused. He passed the man collecting the fares and entered a carriage awaiting repairs. Again and again, he is doing all the foolishness. What is he doing? He passed the man collecting the fares. Then he suddenly passed the man who was collecting the fees. That means the person who was in the ticket counter. Suddenly he passed him and entered a carriage awaiting repairs. And suddenly he got into a carriage. He got into a train carriage which was there for repairment. That bogie or that compartment or that carriage was not at all moving. That carriage was not at all working. That carriage was there for repairment. And suddenly he got into that carriage that stood on a siding. What do you mean by siding? Siding is actually, the meaning is given there, a short track beside a main railway line where trains can stand when they are not being used. If a particular bogie or if a particular train is for repairment, such trains or such bogies or such compartments are kept in siding. So suddenly after asking for the ticket, when he got the ticket, he suddenly got into a compartment or he suddenly got into a carriage which was there on the siding. That means it was there for repairment. Half of his luggage he put on a shelf, the rest on the floor, his coat on his lap, and settled himself for a bit of a nap. If you look at the image in page number 55, you can clearly see the things. So actually the carriage in which he got into was under repairment. It was not actually working. And as he got into the carriage, he placed his luggage on the shelf and some luggage on the floor and his coat on his lap, and he placed his coat on his lap and settled himself for a bit of a nap. What do you mean by nap? Nap is actually a short period of sleep, and after that he just went for a short sleep. All at once he raised his head. I must have been asleep, he said. Hey, what stop is this? He cried. Petushki, a voice replied. And immediately after a short while, he suddenly woke up and asking, which is his place? Which is his place? I just had a slight sleep. Which is his place? And there comes a voiceover, and the voice was like, it is Petushki. So when he came to know that it is the station where he got in, he again went on sleeping. Once again he closed his eyes and dreamt he was in paradise. When he woke, he looked about, raised the window and leaned out. And again for a while he slept, and he saw a dream, and after that he suddenly woke up and again he just raised the window and leaned out. He just raised the window and leaned out his head, and I have seen this town before, and he is simply saying that, yeah, this town, I have seen this town before. I have seen this town before, I believe. Is it Kharkov? And I have seen this town before many times. Is it Kharkov? Kharkov is actually a place in Ukraine, and Kiev is actually the capital of Ukraine. So after suddenly waking up from his sleep, he just mentioned that, yeah, I have seen this place before. Is it Kharkov or is it Kiev? Tell me where I am, he cried. So in that way he screamed, tell me where I am. In Petushki, a voice replied. So that time also there was a voice, and the voice was saying simply that it was Petushki. So again he settled down and dreamed that the world was upside down. Where he woke, he looked about, raised the window and looked out. So again he slept for some hours, and after that he suddenly woke up, and this time also he just raised the window, he raised the curtain and leaned his head outside the window and asking for the place. I seem to know this station too. I think this station is also familiar to me. I have seen this station some days ago. Is it Nalkik or is it Baku? Nalkik is actually a city in Russia, and Baku is actually the capital of Azerbaijan. So these are all places. So in that way he just screamed, is it Nalkik or is it Baku? Tell me what it is called. Tell me the name of the place, he cried. Petushki, a voice replied. Again there comes a voiceover that this place is Petushki. Actually what is happening? What is happening is he just got into a compartment, or he just got into a carriage where it was kept there on a siding for repairment. That means, the carriage in which he was is not at all moving. Up he jumped, it's a crime. So suddenly he just jumped out of the seat. It is a crime. I've been riding all this time. So I've been riding for hours, and if I ask for this place, every time you are saying that this is Petushki, so this is a crime. And here I am where I began. And whenever I ask where is a place, you simply say that it is Petushki. And here I am where I began. So I am simply staying at the place where I began, where I started. That is no way to treat a man. This is not fair. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So in that way the poet concludes his poem by reminding his readers the fact that he is a muddle-headed, that he is a confused man, or a man who does everything in a confusing manner. That man who lived in Petushki. Okay, so this is all the poem is about. So if we are going to analyze the poem, we can find one phrase, that Spoonerism. Spoonerism, I have already mentioned that Spoonerism is actually the slip of tongue. See, for example, look at this word K. So K is supposed to be here instead of this, not K, the K sound, K sound. So this K sound is, look at this word. So this K sound is supposed to be where? Supposed to be here. That means, conductor. And this M is supposed to be where? This M is supposed to be here. So in that way we get Mr. Conductor instead of Kister Conductor. So this is actually a slip of tongue. So when we say something very quickly, this automatically happens. So this is known as Spoonerism. So what you have to do is, you have to go through the entire poem and find out the examples of Spoonerism used in the entire poem. Okay, and now we are going to the second key idea which is described in the poem, exaggeration. So what do you mean by Exaggeration. So, exaggeration is actually a statement that represents something as better or worse than really it is. So, exaggeration is actually a technique which is applied in poem to say something than really it is. So, what do you mean by exaggeration? Exaggeration is a statement that represents something as better or worse than really it is. So, we are saying something than really it is, that is known as exaggeration, and this is better understood with the presence of some examples which we are going to do right now. So, look at the examples. He is running faster than the wind. What is the exaggeration used here? What is the exaggerated language which is applied here in this particular sentence? He is running faster than the wind. So, now come back to the definition. Exaggeration is a statement. What is the statement here? He runs fast. That is a statement here. So, exaggeration is a statement that represents something better or worse than really it is. So, that means we know that no one can be fast as that of a wind. No one can be fast as that of a wind. It is not possible because we know that the speed of wind, and no human being can run or no human being can move just like the wind. Then why are we saying like this? He is running faster than the wind. Yeah, just to convey the fact that he runs so fast. So, this is the exaggerated language, saying something than really it is. Okay, saying something than really it is. We know that he will never run like wind. But even though we know the fact, we used to say that he is running faster than the wind. Why? Yeah, just because to state something than really it is. So, this is known as an exaggeration is. So, look at the second example. That man is as tall as a house. So, here also we can find an exaggeration. We clearly know that a man can never be tall like a house, because you know that a house is very large, a house is very big, and a man can never be like a house or tall like a house. Then why we are saying like this? Yeah, just to say that, just to convey the fact that the man is tall. So, we are stating the sentence than really it is. We are saying that a man is as tall as a house. So, a man can never be like a house. So, even though we are saying that the man is as tall as a house, just to say the fact that to state something than really it is. So, this is actually the example of exaggeration. Now, your task is to go through the poem thoroughly and find out what are the exaggerated usages used in the poem. If you look at the first page of the poem, in the second stanza, you can come across a line like this. You have put a saucepan on your head. Saucepan on your head. We can never put a saucepan on our head. That means the hat is like a saucepan. So, we can say that this language is an example of an exaggerated language applied in this poem. So, in that way, we can say that exaggeration is one of the poetic device used in the entire poem. And can anyone say what is the other poetic device used in the poem? Mainly, there are two poetic devices used in and around the poem. The first one, I have already told that it is exaggeration, exaggerated language, like saucepan on the head, something like that. And what is the other device you can find in and around the poem? Can anyone say? Can anyone say? Nauba, can you say what is the other device used in the poem? Come on. Ilham, can you say? Hood, what about you? Adil Mubarak, can you say? I am not calling you name by name. So, if you know the fact, please share with us. Yeah, very good, right. Repetition. If you go through the entire poem, you can find repetition. And now tell me, what is actually the repetition used in the poem? Yes, in each and every stanza, 2 lines are repeating. What a muddlehead was he, that man who lived in Petushki. So you can easily find that these 2 lines are repeating throughout the entire poem. What do you mean by that? Yeah, that means the poet is applying repetition. Repetition is actually a poetic device, and the poet is applying repetition throughout the entire poem to emphasize the theme of the poem. What is the theme of the poem? The theme of the poem is, the poem is focusing on a man who is completely confused and who is living in Petushki. So, the poet actually wanted to say that this is a poem about a man from Petushki who is totally confused. So, for that purpose, the poet is using repetition in and around the poem. So, in that way, we can say that repetition and exaggeration are the main poetic devices used throughout the entire poem. So, this is all about the poem. Now, it is time to go to the questions, and there are only 5 questions are there. All those questions are very simple. So, what you have to do is, you have to go to the questions and try to find out the answers. Once you finished finding out all those answers, please send it to me. So, anyway, after that, I will share all those answers through WhatsApp. Okay. Anyway, this is all about this chapter, and I hope that you enjoyed this poem. Anyway, I am quite doubtful that you might also get confused by this poem, why this poem is included in our textbook, in our syllabus, because this poem does not convey anything. So, even though this poem does not convey anything, we have to remember that there are so many people in and around us, in our neighborhood or in our places, or there are people like this. So, people who used to do everything in opposite manner, people who used to do everything in a confusing manner. So, what actually the intention of the poet is just to make us relaxed, make us entertained. Okay, so this is a time to wind up. I hope that you understood everything we discussed today. So, this is all about the poem. I hope that you understood everything we discussed today and you enjoyed the poem. Anyway, we can meet after the Onam holidays. Till then, bye bye. Here I am wishing you a happy and prosperous Onam. Thank you.